Welcome to the Mind for Success podcast, a space for heart-centered entrepreneurs to live in deep alignment with what matters most, overcome subconscious limitations, and shift their energy into an unstoppable force. Before we get started, take a deep breath, hit the subscribe button, and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Mind for Success podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Lebbing, and I want to thank you for joining me today because today I'm going to talk about a topic that I know hits every entrepreneur out there at some time, and a lot of times even more than once. And that is breaking free from imposter syndrome. So we've all heard the buzz about imposter syndrome and how that might show up at some point in our businesses. But today, I want to dig into some of the deeper reasons behind it, how it can show up in a business, and how, and some tools for you, for you on how to shift it in different ways. So, I actually looked up the definition of imposter syndrome because I feel like people talk about it a lot and maybe they know what it is totally and maybe they don't. Honestly, I used to be of the belief that, and I still am to a degree, that it's a real thing. And though there's something deeper there, it's not just imposter syndrome. There's something deeper there. So Merriam-Webster defines it that it is understood as a false and sometimes crippling belief that one's successes are the product of luck or fraud rather than skill. So how that plays out, meaning we feel like we're undeserving of our achievements. That's one of the thoughts or feelings. And maybe we don't feel competent in the new successes that we have, maybe the new level of income. Maybe we've got a promotion in, the organization that we're working in. But we feel like we're going to get found out. Like there's this feeling of, I'm not confident. I'm in this new spot. I don't belong here. And somebody's going to find out I'm not as smart as I thought I was, or that they think I am. I'm not as good as what they think I am that got me here. And so there's this whole thought process around I'm going to get found out, or I'm not quite what they thought I was. And so what happens subconsciously is we try and prove our subconscious mind tries to prove ourselves right. So if you are having the thought that you're not competent for this position or for this income or this leadership role that you are now in, your subconscious mind is going to do everything it can to prove yourself right. And what I mean by that, one of my mentors taught this concept. I want to back up a minute. She taught this concept of proving. That's what it's called. And I just thought, I've heard different ways of this sort of being explained, but I thought it was just so genius because it's true. Our subconscious mind will do whatever it can to prove you right. So if you feel you are not competent in your new level of leadership or your new whatever, fill in the blank, your subconscious mind is going to do everything it can to prove you right. Because we innately have this need to be right. And that shows up in all kinds of ways. But subconsciously, that's true too. So what will happen when imposter syndrome shows up is we will try and prove ourselves right. So we end up doing all sorts of goofy things. I can think of times when I have gone through this, because there's been many times, and then I've just done something total in my subconscious, trying to prove me right, did something like totally off the wall or set myself back in some way. It was like this sabotaging type of thing going on. So this is where you end up seeing inconsistency, procrastination. I've seen people injure themselves in an effort to not consciously choosing it, but subconsciously, like, okay, I'm, at this level, and then now all of a sudden I'm sick, or I have this health issue that's popped up that's kind of out of nowhere. And now that's going to keep me back where I was. And it's when we're in that space, of we see the changes that we've made. We're in this belief that maybe we don't deserve it. Maybe we're afraid somebody's going to find out that we're not all that. And so we're proving that what we believe is that we're not worthy, or whatever that belief is. We're proving that that's true. And then we end up sabotaging ourselves, and we see a lot of inconsistency. So the way I see this show up for people is inconsistency, because they're still going they're doing this push and pull of, I'm back here, I'm still in this this old energy, so to speak. I'm still living in this old energy. I'm not sure if I really ought to be here, should be here, if I deserve to be here in this new space, this new energy space. So I'm going to keep going back and forth, which creates inconsistent results. And ultimately, something's out of alignment. Something subconsciously is out of alignment when we're in that space. Another way that it shows up is procrastination. Maybe we're delaying. I've noticed this about myself. Like, I'll miss stuff. It's like, oh my gosh, I just hit this big level, this bigger income level, or whatever it is, or got this big promotion. And then all of a sudden I'm missing things like follow-up, and like, oh my gosh, that was in my calendar, or that was on my thing, and I just totally like spaced out and missed it. So we'll find that we'll do things like that. And it's like, what was I thinking? But it's because our subconscious mind has not caught up to the new us, and it's in this cycle of proving. And one thing that my mentor shares is, this is something that you almost expect it to happen, which is a good thing, because when you know that it's coming, you can prepare for it. And whenever you can prepare for it, you have a choice. So you can choose to stay in the old behavior, or you can choose to move forward. I even see this when people choose to get the help they need. Whenever they've chosen to work on themselves, and we've set up coaching, and they subconsciously know that they're going to go from here up to this different level that maybe they haven't been to before. And then subconsciously there's this imposter syndrome that shows up of, well, you don't really deserve to be at that, different level. You're not, I don't know what you're thinking. Like, all these thoughts come in, and then the cycle of proving happens, and things show up that are like out of nowhere, where it affects maybe even their start date, or, all kinds of things can happen. And what I have learned is to just help people realize that when you commit to something, when you commit to change, or if you've recently had a change happen, that imposter syndrome will show up, and your subconscious mind is going to try and prove you to be in the old energy. It's because ultimately our subconscious mind just wants us to stay the same. It does it out of protection, it does it out of fear, and it just wants us to stay the same. It doesn't mean any harm by that. It's just what we do. It's just what we do. We just want to stay the same because it feels safe, and it's, it's what we know. Your ability to be able to push through that can make such a big impact on you, on your relationships, on your business. And I want to say, I don't want to get off track too much, but this can show up in so many different ways, not just in our businesses. Think about your relationships. I have been talking with, this past week, several people that are entrepreneurs or business owners or professionals, one of those categories. And the reason they're coming to me and talking to me is they're having issues in their relationships. And again, when your subconscious mind starts to know that change is coming, it goes, and it'll take a step back, and it'll do whatever it can to keep you the same, and not, and it's like it doesn't want to support you in that change because it's afraid. It's just afraid. So it's just trying to keep you safe. It shows up in so many different ways. So another aspect of this that I wanted to touch on today, I'll pause a minute because there's so much here to unfold, and I'm just giving you the short version of this, and giving you as much information as I can, but there's so much here to unfold. Another aspect of imposter syndrome is that a lot of times we aren't really getting to what the core issue is. And this is what I mentioned earlier, that I see a lot of people, there's so much buzz about imposter syndrome, but honestly, what I see is that people really aren't getting to the core reason behind the imposter syndrome. They are calling it imposter syndrome, and they're just pushing through, or not. Maybe they just keep in this inconsistent roller coaster result kind of cycle for a while. But what I want to hone in on is, if you haven't really dealt with the deeper reason behind that imposter syndrome, and I'll explore with you a little bit of what that might be, you're going to continue to have this come up, and it's going to come up in different layers. It's going to come up again over and over and over again. When you start a personal growth journey, it can be one of the most profound, best, wonderful things that you can do for yourself. It can also be really hard. And you will see different layers as you go on this journey. It really is a journey. You will see different layers of it show up. But if you never deal with the core issue to start with, you're gonna stay in that inconsistent results roller coaster kind of business that can be really frustrating. Quite honestly, it can lead you to burnout. And that's not what I want for you. I'm sure that's not what you want for you either, or your family, or your spouse, or your friends, whoever is there alongside you. They don't want you to burn out. And that's what it can lead to when you're putting so much energy into trying to not be in a certain energy instead of just being in the new energy, it can be exhausting. So, and I'm going to give you an example of how you can dive in a little bit deeper to see what the real core issue is behind the imposter syndrome. So one of my clients a couple years ago came to me who she owned a couple of businesses actually, and she wanted to grow her business. She wanted to grow it, and when she initially talked to me, she said that she thought it was imposter syndrome. She had been in the same place in her business for several years and could not figure out why she wasn't growing it. And she said, it's got to be imposter syndrome. I have a fear of success. I have fear of, all these things that we throw out there. And one of the things that I did with her, and that I want to encourage you to do, is, pull out a journal and ask yourself, okay, what's the behavior behind this? Like, what's the pattern that's showing up? And what is it really about? And so for a lot of people, and for her, it was a trust thing. So that imposter syndrome actually ended up being more about trust, and her trusting herself, her trusting her ability to grow, her trusting that she was going to find the right people and bring those into her. And it was about being in alignment with that, because her pattern from a long time ago was that, and this is what triggered the imposter syndrome. Her pattern was, I don't trust myself, that people aren't trustworthy. And there was a specific event around that. People aren't trustworthy. And so I can't hire more people because it's going to be hard. And I'm going to have to do all the work myself anyway, because they're never going to do it to the degree that I want to do it in, them to do it in. They'll never be able to do it as good as I do. So she kept hanging on to that. I've seen it, and not just her, but I've seen other people hire people, fire people, hire people, fire people, get help, and then back away from it. Same thing. It's that, it's on the surface, it's imposter syndrome. Under the surface, there's this like deeper thing going on. And a lot of times it has to do with trust, trusting others. That's not the only reason, but that's an example of it, that there's usually something deeper going on underneath all that, underneath all that imposter syndrome, verbiage, BS, whatever you want to call it, that shows up. Underneath all that, there's something much deeper, and we have to be aware, and we have to deal with it. So ask yourself those deeper questions. And I wrote out a few here is, what's the thought? What's the hot thought behind it? Is it something that shows up in other places? Is it something that's shown up in the past? How has it been a problem? So how has this been a problem for you? And by doing that, you should be able to get to the deeper reason behind the imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I love to say over and over and over again is you can't shift into a new energy if you're not aware of the pattern that's going on. You have to be aware of the pattern that's going on so that you can disrupt it and choose to do things differently. So other ways that this shows up, other deeper reasons, maybe I'm not good enough. Instead of imposter syndrome, if I were coaching you right now, I would ask you, like, does not good enough, does that feel like that's got a deeper charge for you than, just imposter syndrome? And if it does, like that's a deep one. That can affect a lot of things. That can affect your ability to have good relationships. It can affect your business. It can affect your ability to earn higher, take in high incomes and increase your revenue. I mean, it's a deep thing and it's fairly common. It is fairly common. And people think, oh no, that's not me. But you know what? When they sit with themselves just a little bit, then and dig in, they find that there's something much deeper there than they ever thought was there because they've spent years pushing it under the rug, push it under the rug and not deal with it. And it ends up leading to, again, inconsistent results. It can lead to just unhappiness and in relationships. And it's not a fun space to be in. It's not a fun place to be in. And so taking the time to dig into what is it about this that's causing me to keep doing this pattern or to, not do what I need to do or not show up. With imposter syndrome, a very practical way to look at it is this even true? Like, okay, because, going back to the definition of it, that we feel, undeserving or that we feel we aren't competent or intelligent enough. I mean, that right there, I don't feel confident or intelligent enough. I know like not feeling intelligent enough is a pattern that I had from growing up because of the way I was talked to by my own dad, honestly. So I know how that can show up. And that's a voice, that's a subconscious pattern that your brain will do everything it can to prove it right. So, oh, you messed that up? Yep, you're right. You're not smart enough to do this. It'll keep doing that over and over again. So getting to those deeper reasons is worth it. And it can make a big difference and a big shift. And then you get to show up in a different kind of energy. So now I want to share some resources or some steps you can take to help you kind of overcome and work through it. Some of it I've already shared with you. And that, first thing is to really dig into what it is, pull out that journal. I love affirmations. If I'm probably going to do a podcast on this if you're listening to this, but you also want to make sure the affirmations are aligned with you. If they're not, they can work against you. So, and what I mean by that is if you're saying something like, I am a money magnet, and you're not, and you don't believe that you are, and it's so far from the truth of where you are right now, your subconscious mind is just going to reject that. So when choosing affirmations, they can be very powerful, but sit with it and see how that feels and how that lands with you, because they really should be affirming, hence the name, affirming what it is that you already believe. So affirmations, though, I do believe are a really great way to do this. Another thing that you can do is visualize. Visualization is such a great tool to use, and visualizing yourself in that new energy until it becomes a little more familiar. So in that new energy, in that new role, in that new amount of money that you're making, visualize it to help you along with affirmations can be really powerful as long as it is aligned, as it is aligned. And then I also wanted to give you a resource, and this is something that I have myself. I mean, there's plenty of books on imposter syndrome out there. So, read, listen to podcasts like this one. There's so many great ones out there, and keep yourself plugged in. But I also have a free guide, and it's called Unlocking your authentic self, and it takes you through the steps to uncover whatever that thing is that might be keeping you from becoming the thing that the person that you want to be. So, and it's very specific steps that you can take, pull out a journal or print it up and just go through the steps and, carve out an hour or so and work on that. Take some time for yourself and spend some time with you. And as another resource, you can reach out to me. This is what I do. I help people, I help entrepreneurs specifically uncover what beliefs might be holding them back or getting in the way of who it is that they really want to be. And I help them get aligned with that so that they can step into their true, authentic selves. So thank you so much for listening today. I appreciate you. And if you enjoyed this podcast, I'll ask you to share it and go in and rate it. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, go in and rate the podcast. That helps it get seen by more people. And thank you again for listening. Thank you for listening today. I want to invite you to download my free guide at resources.kimberlylebbing.com/unlock. It's called Unlocking Your Authentic Self, 5 Key Steps to Identify and Overcome Hidden Limitations in Your Life and Business and Realize Your Highest Potential. Thank you again for listening today.